So we're going to take care of that group's feelings, despite the fact that they're doing devastation. But meanwhile, they're harming many, many, many people. The person you met didn't exist. The person you met was created on the fly in that moment so that you would like them, trust them, and let them into your lives. But that person wasn't who really you got into a relationship with. And once the relationship started to happen, that mask started dropping, you started to see more of who they really are in day-to-day life because they can't sustain it. That person is the real person. So you know how it feels like you've got Dr. Jekyll and Mr. or Ms. Hyde, you know, you're living with these two different people? Dr. Jekyll isn't real. Mr. Hyde or Ms. Hyde is. That's the real person. It's when we keep believing that Dr. Jekyll could come back and may be real that keeps us stuck and why we can't leave and why we feel like it's our fault when things come apart. Part of that is done deliberately. They want you left in this state of confusion, so it gives them an excuse. When something bad happens, they can just pop back in, do a little love bombing. It becomes more breadcrumbing. You know, they just go to, instead of the whole wonderful package, you just get a small thing, get smaller and smaller. But they do that in order to keep you believing that who you met was real when that person wasn't real. They feel you slipping, and then they do something in order to keep you hooked. But it also messes with your mind and creates a state of confusion, leaving you to think that this person that you initially met wouldn't do this. Then why did it happen? Somebody mentioned how hard it is to talk about this. Here's a reason why. And part of the reason why is not only are we being sold a mask, but the public's being sold one too. The public is being sold that they're good people, that they're sane. It's called the mask of sanity. So that, and what's dangerous about that is then when people believe it, the people do believe it, and then they'll give you bad advice as a result of it. They'll say, oh, so-and-so is not, they would never do that. And yet what you've been living with in the inside of the relationship, you know differently. You know exactly what they're capable of doing. So please be very careful about advice you get from those around you. They've not seen much of, anybody can keep something up temporarily. If you see somebody for maybe an hour a week or less, you know, somebody at yesterday's barbecue, you can play the good guy for that, or even for a holiday weekend. You can play a good guy or wonderful woman for that as well. But from the day to day, that's what you and I are living in. It's much harder. So we see more of the reveal. So please trust your gut above all things. You know what this person's capable of. Somebody says, I'm harming people with cluster B personality disorders. I'm actively harming them. Yeah, well, I don't think I'm actually challenging them to get better. That's what I'm challenging them. Because here, let me follow the logic out, because I think this is fascinating logic. Let's take it for a moment. If we stop warning people and stop talking about bad behavior and some people who are doing things they shouldn't be doing, what are we actually saying? So we're going to ignore that and allow people to be hurt, okay? And because we're going to harm a group who's harming people. So we're going to take care of that group's feelings, despite the fact that they're doing devastation. But meanwhile, they're harming many, many, many people because of this. But their feelings matter more than everybody they're harming. What? That doesn't work. That's not the economy I live in. My feelings matter as much as your feelings, right? My feelings matter as much as my ex feelings, right? He shouldn't have done what he did, right? Shouldn't he, right? That was wrong, right? Well, all this you're seeing here, all this pouring out of pain is wrong. But we're going to make sure that their feelings aren't hurt by not talking about it because it's uncomfortable or makes you feel bad, even though you're feeling bad because of a disorder that you have because you're doing things that are harmful. See, it just doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. I get where you're at. I don't want you to feel bad. So my solution, I think, is a better solution. Change. Yeah, you're going to tell me, well, it's very hard to change. I know it's hard to change. Get into therapy. Hold yourself accountable. Find an accountability partner. When you start to feel the temptation to do something that's hurtful, like discarding, like faking, future faking, like hoovering, like be sarcastic and contempt and stonewalling, like lying, stop. Don't do those things. Stop. That's the solution. How much this person hates us using narcissistic abuse because it demonizes everybody with a disorder. Well, to me, this is sort of a Chinese puzzle situation. If you read a definition by Dr. Kristen Milstead in Psych Central, which I often refer to, it's an amazing. So if you did a Google search, Psych Central, Dr. Kristen Milstead, definition of narcissistic abuse, she does this amazing layout of what it is. I really love it. It's awful. And most narcissists, almost all of them that I know who qualify for a narcissistic personality disorder, behave this way. It's the way that they treat, it's the nature of the disorder. It's the nature, you can't have the disorder unless you're doing these things. They are part and parcel. Does it demonize those who have narcissistic personality disorder? Yeah, I guess it probably does. It probably is very hurtful. But then you have a choice. If you discovered you have this condition and you're leaving this wake of destruction behind you in broken relationships, broken hearts, broken trust, then isn't on you to do something about it instead of telling the rest of the world to please stop referring to it as abusive. It is abusive. Shouldn't you stop the abuse? To stop being demonized is to behave differently. We're using words that describe how we're being treated. It's hurtful, it's abusive, it's evil to those of us this happens to. To have someone, use my story. To have someone get into the relationship after they know I've been widowed, after a long marriage, and I'm brokenhearted, I'm still brokenhearted, to get into a relationship while they're seeing other people and yet insist on monogamy from me, make me think that I'm in a monogamous relationship, allow me to then get married believing all of this is true, knowing that they hope to be able to be added to my assets in order to take advantage of me, is that not evil? It is. It is evil. What Sarah Jane was explaining about what's happening to her at her job, is that not evil? Yeah, it is. Why do we need to tear down and destroy another person's position, livelihood, and standing in the community just because there's a possible loss of this relationship? All of us need to learn to do better when it comes to how we act in relationships. All of us. We need to become kinder, more sensitive. We need to treat each other better. We need to be less abusive and assaultive. So, to me, if you discover that you are hurting people and that maybe you have too many narcissistic traits, I see that as on you to do something about it, not on me to not call it what it is. I know we've gotten into this very careful society about how we try not to step on each other's toes, but there's a whole group of people. Everyone around you is being stepped on by the behavior. Stop stepping on us. We'll stop calling it that. That to me, it's the Chinese puzzle. It's one of these both poles things. You want it to be different, then be different.